The Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Stood beneath the bridge, all of us across this country, in those long moments, were staring civil war in the face. All over this country, at this moment, we are still staring civil war in its bloody face. To believe otherwise is to whistle past the graveyard of our own history. We have, to use the blunt words of my Michigan farmer grandpa Vanderbilt, arrived at nut-cutting time.
Okay, this is, welcome back to the Randi Rhodes Show, Hour 3 of the Thursday edition. I'm Nicole Sandler of RadioOrNot.com, in for Randi. If you thought things at the Bundy Ranch and the federal land around it in Nevada were over, I think again. It's even gotten a bit more insane. This guy, you hear the generator in the background. I guess it's powering up his little microphone. That is Mike Vanderberg, I think is how you pronounce his name. He is the founder of the 3%er militia, still inciting people there to violence. So this, I guess, was from yesterday. Let's listen to a little more, shall we?
This is not a question whose differing answers can be compromised or negotiated, or finessed. It is one or the other. That of individual liberty codified by the Constitution,
I don't think
the
he's
rule
read
of
it.
law under the Founders Republic, or the rule of man as represented by the law of the jungle, backed up by the iron fist of tyrannical government.
You know, it's so amazing because he's out there in support of a guy who is breaking the law with impunity, who has for decades broken the law, who has thumbed his nose at court decisions and injunctions and just says, I don't recognize the federal government, really. And he's talking about the empirical rule of a big government. The law of the land is the law of the land, right? It gets better.
Harry Reid understands it. Y'all saw what he said the other day. This isn't over, he said. You know what? He's right.
Yeah. Because they're still there.
It can never be over until one side or the other wins.
Really? Wins? Is this a war?
Don't think he's just talking about the bunch. He is promising us all civil war on a vast scale.
So there he is saying Harry Reid is promising us all civil war on a mass scale. No, Harry Reid is not saying that at all. In fact, when Harry Reid called he called Cliven Bundy a domestic terrorist. Actually, what he should have said is those people who were taking up arms defending a lawbreaker, those are the terrorists. They're the ones threatening war. They're the ones threatening federal officers with guns. That's sedition. Those people should be rounded up and arrested, and I'm amazed they're still able to congregate there and do this stuff. I think back to the Occupy Wall Street protests. Peaceful, nonviolent protests. Or Occupy, look, I had a lot of problems with Occupy, but in that they didn't have many rules or many, specific goals. But their one rule was no violence. One rule was peaceful, nonviolent protest, and a militarized police force in city after city after city hit them with everything from tear gas to pepper spray to what are those blast bombs? Those flashbang grenades. They treated it was a violent police action against these peaceful protesters, and here you have lawbreakers taking up arms against the government, and it's hands off. Something is wrong with this picture. So there he was, this 3%er guy, Mike Vanderberg, saying Harry Reid is threatening civil war. No.
Hell on earth is what he wants. Because state-sponsored violence is the only way that they can win an argument. Free people, especially free people who are armed and willing to use those arms in defense of liberty. Harry Reid says this isn't over. Based on the warning y'all gave him and his bully boys last week, he should fervently pray that it is.
It sounded like a threat to me.
As for me, I think I'll send him a soap dish.
Send him a soap dish?
2014 Award for Incitement to Civil War.
Award for Incitement to Civil War?
I will send it as a reminder with the message, don't poke the Wolverine with a sharp stick, Harry, unless you want your balls ripped off.
Yeah. Okay. Now, that to me sounded like a threat against a U.S. Senator. Don't poke a Wolverine with a sharp stick unless you want your, can I say that word? Balls ripped off. Really? And these people are still there. Not only are they still there, still armed to the teeth, they are, they've set up checkpoints around town. And just know that the residents of the aptly named Bunkerville, Nevada, aren't too happy. So a little later this hour, we're going to speak with Nevada journalist John Ralston. He worked for both major newspapers there. He's got a TV show. He is like the go-to journalist in Nevada. He's got a great piece up in Politico right now about the not-so-jolly rancher, how federal officials botched the Bundy cattle roundup. And the fact that they're still there spouting that nonsense is proof positive that the feds botched it. I'm sorry. They need to stop this nonsense now. And again, the fact that they reacted to peaceful, nonviolent protesters during the Occupy movement with horrible force, and these people are still out there armed to the teeth threatening war, threatening civil war, threatening the Senate majority leader, they should all be locked up. Every last one of them. All right. 866-87-RANDY is the number. 866-877-2634. Judy in Seattle. Hi.
Hi there, Nicole. You know, I've never actually talked to you, but I've talked to Randy for many, many years.
Uh-huh.
And so I am definitely going to miss her. But I just wanted to say today I am proud to be somebody who lives in Seattle.
Yes. How awesome is this?
I mean, you know, we have $15 an hour now. We can smoke pot and get gay married, but we still don't have a progressive radio station.
I know. Well, and you did. And now it's a sports station because this is what's happening around the country. They don't want our voices out there.
No, they don't. But so far, it's still working here in Seattle, and I'm still hoping it will continue to work here.
Well, hopefully, you know, the internet will stay neutral. You know, we keep net neutrality.
That's the next big.
You know, because you can find good progressive talk online, and I hope you'll check out radioornot.com. But let's talk about Shama Sawant because she's pretty awesome, huh?
I voted for her.
Good for you. Good for you. And so this $15 an hour minimum wage will be phased in. It'll raise incrementally through the end of the decade. But that's great.
And you know something? It's going to help everybody, including my daughter, who right now earns only slightly above minimum wage here in Washington. The minimum wage is like $9.50 an hour, and she earns, I think, $10.35 an hour, and I can tell you right now, she ends up, she and her boyfriend, who also earns minimum wage, they have an apartment together, and they still have to visit the food bank in order to make ends meet. And she runs around in a 15-year-old car when she drives it, which is hardly ever because she can't afford the gas.
Right.
And it's just it's ridiculous. I mean, when you've got two people bringing in money, and by the time you get done paying your rent, paying your food, paying your bills, you know, and all that stuff like that, she still has to visit the food bank.
It's so sad.
And she works, well, she doesn't work full time because they won't allow her to work full time.
Wow. We need some elected officials like you have there in the Seattle City Council. We need those kind of elected officials in D.C.
Nationally.
standing up for us, fighting, just like what Bernie Sanders was saying. We need more of him. We need more Alan Graysons. We need more Elizabeth Warrens. We need real progressives. And Sean and I were talking during the break that, or maybe it was Beowulf, and I said, when I said Sanders, Warren, Sanders, how awesome would that be? You know why? Because the sleeping giant would awaken. Because people like you and me all over this country would say, yes, now I have something to be excited about.
Yeah, really. I mean, the idea of Hillary Clinton running and winning as a woman is exciting for me. But beyond that...
Right. Really? We want another Clinton, number one, and Hillary Clinton, who, is too buddy-buddy with Wall Street. And I'm sorry. It's time for something new. It's time for a real progressive. And she is not that.
When they do the polls about Obama's approval ratings, and they're like, like 45 to 50 or something in the 40s, and they're saying, look how low they are. You see. What they don't actually tell you is that I'm disappointed in Obama, too.
For different reasons, right.
I'm disappointed that he hasn't spoken out enough for what he should be speaking out for, and putting the kibosh on things, like instead of farting around, with the pipeline and,
how about this? He should be working to expand Social Security rather than cut benefits. This chain CPI nonsense and the grand bargain, that's a smack in the face to the Democrats who came before him and fought so hard for those protections.
Yes, I mean, that's crap. And so because of that, I'm disappointed with him. I'm not disappointed with him because he's not conservative enough. I'm disappointed with him because he isn't doing what he promised to do in 2008.
Mm-hmm. I'm there with you.
And so that and Hillary Clinton, in many ways, if she ends up getting the nomination and running against a Republican, I will in fact vote for her.
So will I.
It's not because I will be voting for her.
It'll be against them.
I am not voting for the other person.
Of course, it'll be against them. Look, and I've said that. I'm here in Florida, right? And we have a gubernatorial race coming up. And Rick Scott is evil. He is just evil incarnate. This is just an indication of how people vote against their own best interest. Rick Scott was the company that he founded and headed had to pay the biggest fine in history for the largest Medicare fraud ever perpetrated on the American people. And the state of Florida elects him as governor. Florida, right? And so, right, and so. Right. And so now we have a real progressive in a woman named Nan Rich. She was the state senator for years. She led the Senate Democrats until she was term limited out. She's been running. She's a progressive. She's awesome. But the Florida Democratic Party sold its soul for Charlie Crist's endorsement of Obama. I mean, it's insane. And so now the media and the Florida Democratic Party and everybody else talks about Charlie Crist as if he's the nominee. Well, you know what? The Florida primary isn't until August 12th. I'm sorry. I will go head on for Nan Rich and fight for her. And Charlie Crist won't debate her either, by the way, which is chicken. Sorry. And, finally, after the primary, if Charlie Crist gets the nomination, I'll hold my nose and vote against Rick Scott. But I'm sorry. He's doing the same tricks that the Republicans play. It's disgusting. We need to stand up and get real progressives elected if we want to see the change that's going to get this country back on the right track. Judy, thank you so much for the call. It was great talking with you.
Nicole, thank you very much, and I will be listening to your podcast, just not at 7 a.m.
No, that's fine. That's why the podcast is there, and it's always free. So radioornot.com, you can get it all there. All right?
All right. Thank you.
Nicole.
You have a good day.
You too. All right, we'll take a break. Come back with more of your calls next. And still to come, John Ralston of Nevada on the Bundy nonsense, insanity. We'll be right back. Well, it's Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes, taking your calls. Let's get back to it. Mike in Scottsdale, Arizona, listening on KPHX. Hi there.
Hi, Nicole. Can I be a little critical of you first?
Yeah.
I'll be respectful.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
When you say these people should be rounded up and arrested. It sounds like those right-wingers when they talk about illegal aliens, and I don't like that.
Yeah, but let me say this. I hear what you're saying, and I know. It just makes me angry that people taking up arms against federal officers are allowed to just, that the feds backed off and said, okay, you stay here, we'll leave. And this is emboldening them to do more. And then they were saying, all right, where else can we go? Who else can we protect? Who else's freedom can we protect when they're breaking the law?
Well, I understand your concern. I've got to tell you, I came down from Cedar City, Utah, and I stopped in there yesterday for gas.
Oh, boy.
And I went through all those camps. I talked to people, went in the gas station, stayed in Vegas last night, had a great time. But anyway, my whole point about this, I talked to the gas station, the lady who runs the grocery store. She said her sales are up 10 times what normally is.
Well, right, because they've got a lot of people from out of town there.
Right. There's news crews camped out all over the place. The guys that are camped there, they're American citizens. They're not doing anything wrong. I don't agree with them,
but they're taking up arms. They're holding guns and pointing them at federal law enforcement officials.
But Nicole, they did that, yes.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that now. So just leave them alone.
So what are they doing now?
What are they doing?
Yeah.
They're just hanging out. I swear to God.
They're just talking about having a civil war and blowing off Harry Reid's balls?
They're selling T-shirts. There's vendors there. Like I said, there's news crews. There's all kinds of curiosity people buying hats and T-shirts.
Oh, my God.
They've got 2 or 3 camps. I went to one of the camps down by the Virgin River. It's a big sandy river.
Yeah.
It actually was so windy. And here's my prediction, Nicole. And I won't take a lot of your time.
It's okay.
You don't need to rest them. In 2-3 weeks, the temps will be so hot they can't.
Oh, right. Well, here's my other idea. You know, first of all, it sounds like, like a Glenn Beck rally gone bad, which, if you can imagine that.
Comical,
but the other, you remember the Stephen King book, The Stand, I think it was, where, all the good people went to, I guess there was some kind of a viral infection that killed off, most of the population, and the ones that were left, the good people went to Boulder, Colorado. I guess they knew the pot laws were going to change eventually. And the bad guys all went to Vegas. So I say we give that part of the Nevada, land there that's going to be like a burning desert soon. Let them all go there. We can just put a giant fence around them and they can have at it.
Well, it's a wasteland. I don't think anybody wants to. Other than the town of Mesquite, and as you get up to St. George and into Cedar City, it's beautiful up in Utah. But, it's the same thing with Vegas. If it wasn't for the big resort casinos and everything, it'd be a wasteland too.
Yeah.
It's the worst desert in the world.
Right. Well, it was a desert. Look, my parents, my father was a big gambler, a responsible gambler, but a gambler nonetheless. And when I was young, he and my mom used to go on junkets because the hotels would fly him in. And we have old home movies from them going to Vegas in the 60s.
Wow.
And Vegas was empty. I mean, there were like 2 or 3 hotels on the Strip. You look at, and the Hoover Dam was there.
Oh,
and you look at that, and you look at it now. Wow. I may have to digitize those and, put them up on my YouTube account or something because it's so interesting to see it now.
Yeah.
See that.
Cosmopolitan, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. All right. I know.
Well, they're not a threat, Nicole. That's all I want to say.
I'm sorry. When somebody's pointing an assault rifle, wearing paramilitary gear and pointing an assault rifle at federal law enforcement officers, I think that counts as dangerous. And I think it warrants an arrest. So maybe it's just me. We'll talk to John. It's Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes, and we're working on getting John Ralston. But it's interesting because there's sort of dueling opinions about what's going on with these self-described militia members. Our last caller is I think what he was saying is, you know what? They're harmless. They're just wacko weirdos. It's like a carnival. It's like it's like a Burning Man for nut jobs. For the Alex Jones crowd. Right, for the teabaggers. But then, I see listener Tamara at Blue in Mo on Twitter, and she said it's armed insurrection. They are keeping the people of Bunkerville hostage, stopping anyone from entering, not stopping there. And that's true. And I know that, while some of the business people in town might be happy that they're making a little more money, the residents are not happy. And now there is this piece up at Crooks and Liars, written by Dave Nywert. Back at the Bundy Ranch, it's Oath Keepers versus militiamen as wild rumors fly. It was the imminent drone attack that finally did it. A wild and paranoid rumor that the feds were planning to attack with a lethal drone revealed a deep rift in the Bundy Ranch ranks. So I guess there's infighting now on the ranch. Ooh, boy. There's the other thing. Let them just kill each other off and keep us out of it. That'd work. All right, back to the phones. Frank in Albuquerque. Hi.
Luckily for us, Nicole, none of those Bundy idiots at the ranch are smart enough to register voters while they're selling the T-shirts.
Well, they don't believe in the federal government, so why would they vote for a member of Congress, right?
Well, but that kind of thing does attract a lot of attention. But, I had my popcorn ready to watch the great fight at the Clive and Bundy Ranch, but it turned out to be a dud. People like me and you who've been arrested by the fascists, we know that in the United States of America, law enforcement is about easy targets. So, I'm guessing they're just going to leave the insane racist traitors with guns alone and come after people like us.
Okay, now, you know what? Look, I appreciate the police, and I do believe that the majority of them are good. I think some people go into law enforcement for the wrong reasons, and they put on a badge and they holster a gun and they think that they're in charge. But I think for the most part, most people who go into law enforcement do so for good reasons. That said, I don't know what goes through the mind of someone who, for instance, would pepper spray a group of students sitting down in silent protest. I don't get it, but it happens, and I have to hope that these authorities, the feds in Nevada, are figuring out a way to arrest the people who are raising arms in insurrection. Hey, Frank, I got to run because we got John Ralston, but thank you for the call. John Ralston is he is a Nevada journalist. He's been around at both newspapers. He's the host of TV's Ralston Reports. He runs his own website now, ralstonflash.com, and he's got a piece up at Politico.com, The Not So Jolly Rancher, about Mr. Bundy. Hi, John. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Randi Rhodes Show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So I read your piece at Politico, how federal officials botched the Bundy cattle roundup. And I think they did, too. I mean, the fact that they just left while there are people taking up arms against federal officers, how can they just walk away from that?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I think this has been botched at every step of the way, including going all the way back 20 years. I mean, they've allowed this guy to essentially be a criminal for 20 years without doing anything about it. They considered doing something in 2012, then backed off. This time they decided to go through with it, but they didn't really listen to local law enforcement, and so they unnecessarily antagonized some people going in. Now, Bundy was spoiling for a fight from day one, but the problem is that he then alerted all these other folks to his cause, and so you had these militia types descending on this nice, peaceful town 80 miles from Las Vegas. And then it got to the point where the local sheriff became very, very worried that there could be a real bloodbath there. I mean, there were kids running around. Right. There were people who had essentially no business being there and weren't armed, running around among federal officers, local law enforcement, and these armed militia gangs who were there. So they decided discretion was the better part of valor. But now you've got the problem is the precedent this sets is to all the hundreds of other ranchers across this country, well, if you don't want to pay your grazing fee, get some militia types to come down and the federal government will back off. Right. So they have to do something. I agree. Fairly convinced they will do something, but I think they're going to wait for the temperature to go down a little bit more.
Right, I hear you. Now, over at Crooks and Liars, my friend Dave Nywert has a post up that says there was a rumor going around that a drone attack was imminent, and it caused some division between the Oath Keepers and the militiamen, and the Oath Keepers were urging everyone to leave because a drone strike was coming, and the militiamen were getting mad. Might they just, fight amongst themselves and finish each other off?
Well, I watched an almost an hour-long video post today by 4 Oath Keepers who were there, And as a matter of fact, one who's going to come on my program tonight, which ought to be something else, in which they talk about this warring among the militias, and in which they talk that they had credible evidence of a drone strike, which seems utterly fantastic.
Yes.
To me, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But there were definitely, these guys were talking about altercations with other militia members and how they essentially are portraying themselves as the responsible militia guys there. So this is a very, very combustible situation. You have people who are armed who were saying they were going to drop these other guys. And can you imagine if one person got shot, what would happen with the rest of them? So, and the sheriff here told me he's been to a lot of events in his life. He has never seen so many guns. So you just imagine what might have happened up there.
Right, I can, and that's what's so frightening. Now, then you had that Sheriff Richard Mack, who's not the current sheriff, right? He's a nut job. He's the one who was saying, well, if they start shooting, we're going to put the women and children up front. And then you've got these people taking up arms against, again, federal officers. I wonder why they just didn't go in there fully decked out in bulletproof gear and stand their ground and say, bring it on. Make them, the militia people, the crazies, attack, because I don't think they would. Or do you? I mean, are they that nuts?
I think some of them are actually that nuts, from what I've been able to find out. Secondly, I think the BLM at the highest levels, even up to the Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell, wanted to press forward, but were only at the last minute persuaded to back off by local law enforcement, and based upon the number of people who, by the time of the roundup, were massing there and were very, very well armed. Now, the BLM and the National Park Service had about 150 people there, but I'm not sure that wouldn't have resulted in, what some people are describing as a Waco or Ruby Ridge situation, where you would have had some really bad bloodshed, and there would have been arguments about who fired first, et cetera. And so I just think they decided in the end it just wasn't worth it. Now, they never should have allowed the situation to develop to the point where it was. That is what the travesty is here now. I talked to some former BLM officials, one of whom was fairly high-ranking, who said what they need to do is somehow get in there and arrest Bundy and get him out of there and essentially say you're going to stay in jail until those cattle are taken away and sold and you pay your fees.
Right. And is that even being discussed?
They're being very, very closed-mouthed about what the next option is. You can understand why.
Right,
they don't want to tip anybody off to when they might do whatever they're going to do. And so the local sheriff here has tried to talk Bundy out of doing anything. He's tried to talk him into the court system. But this is a guy who I believe has already been so elevated by people around him and to these lofty levels, and now he's starting to believe the virtual reality that's been set up around him is reality. And so I just don't think there's any talking to him about doing that now.
Well, so John Ralston, you've been around media enough, obviously, hosting your own TV show, writing for newspapers, but you've been in that part of the country for a long, long time. You know it well. How much do you think Sean Hannity's propping up of Bundy has had an impact on this? I mean, do you think that this has emboldened him because he's gotten, I guess the stamp of approval from Sean Hannity?
Well, I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think what Hannity did was totally irresponsible. He elevated Bundy. He essentially started asking Bundy whether he would get into a violent confrontation with federal officials. And so the whole Fox News, conservative blogosphere, right-wing talk radio nonsense clearly emboldened not just Bundy, but the folks around there. And then you have some local officials doing the same thing, pandering to that side. You have a U.S. senator going on a NBC affiliate here, calling those folks patriots.
I know.
I mean, it's just, it's really, really embarrassing, and frankly, it's very, very dangerous.
It is dangerous, and that's the thing that's so scary. The fact that, one, there are so many weapons, and two, these people are nuts, and they're talking about, I just played the clip from the, what's his name, the Vanderbog guy, the 3%er, talking talking about, civil war, and this is not over, and Harry Reid, and I'm going to tear his balls off. And I mean, and those people would bring children to that kind of an atmosphere. It sounds like a powder keg that's about to blow.
Well, I think it's dissipated a little bit because I think to some extent, after Bundy started showing how little he knows about race in America, I think a lot of people have stepped away from him saying, wait a second. I think some of the militia folks have left, but they're still up there, too. And there have been allegations of them setting up checkpoints and doing all kinds of other things. The congressman who represents that district there has asked local law enforcement to investigate what some of his constituents have told him. So there is still an atmosphere up there that I think can be described as potentially incendiary, and so I think they're going to be very, very careful.
Yeah, well, definitely. So, I had a caller just a few minutes ago who just drove through Bunkerville. Boy, if there was ever an aptly named town.
Yeah.
Drove through Bunkerville yesterday, and he said actually some of the local businesses are happy because their business is up, 300% or whatever. How are the townspeople feeling about all this?
Well, I think they're divided. I mean, I think some people are sympathetic to Bundy's cause, but a lot of others are worried about, this is a very peaceful community. Nothing ever happens up there, and they're happy about that. And so their way of life has been disturbed by this, and they want them gone. And those are the ones who have come to me, they've gone to the congressman and said, do something about it.
Do you think this is just going to play, or you don't know? I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens.
I hate to speculate on what might happen.
Right.
But I wish I could tell you that this is over. It's not over.
Wow. It's nice, I guess, since Bundy showed that he's a bigoted idiot who knows nothing, maybe some of the people left. And some of the media attention seemed to die down. So when I saw the other day that they actually set up checkpoints and they're checking people before they come into town, tell us what that's about.
Well, that's what Stephen Horsford, the congressman who represents the area, said he's been told by some of his constituents. No one's gotten pictures of these checkpoints. I had an extensive email from a woman who lives up there who said on Easter Sunday people were intimidated from going into church by the presence of all these armed men surrounding the area. But what exactly is going on up there? All I can tell you is that some of the people are very unsettled by it.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. Look, I'm all the way here in Florida, and I'm unsettled by it. Right?
Exactly.
Well, best of luck. We'll follow along. I know we can find your work at ralstonflash.com. John Ralston, thank you so much, and best of luck out there.
Thanks for having me on.
It's good to talk with you. Bye-bye. All right. What a horrible situation. And what is with these? Can you imagine? I'm sorry. Look, I don't believe in infringing on people's rights. We have a right to gather, but we have a right to peaceful gathering. When you gather with arms, and you heard them say, look, the one sheriff said, I've never seen so many guns in one place. That is a recipe for disaster. Now, interesting, I got a tweet from somebody. A politic wizard said, Nicole, if the rumors are true about the infighting, I think we should airdrop whiskey. They'll kill each other off. You know what? They're in the Vegas desert. Give them peyote. Who knows what could happen. I would watch that movie. All right. One more break. Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes. We'll grab another couple of calls at 866-87-RANDI, 866-877-2634. We'll be right back. I'll tell you, this is the fastest 3 hours each day. It just zooms by. I'm Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes. Randi will be back Monday. Tomorrow we'll finish off the week talking about really, I think, the two biggest issues that we've been dealing with this week. They're wealth inequality, right, and racism. That has just reared its ugly head in a sickening way. So we'll be joined by David K. Johnston and Tim Wise, who both fascinating, brilliant men. So we'll also, talk to you. Look, I hate that this show is going away. I hate the fact that I'm not going to hear Randi's voice every day, her wisdom and her take on what's going on in the world, because it's a voice we need. And this show that is put together so beautifully, it is so researched, it is so fact-filled, and a lot of work goes into getting Randi's show on the air and through the 3 hours each day. Her great staff, we got Sean Smith-Pierce and Beowulf Rockland, who's been with the show since January. Actually, Tammy Herrera is out sick today, and we've had Jeff DeRay in her place, so thank you, Jeff. But tomorrow, we want to take your calls. I know Sean said, hey, if anyone has any questions about the show, they can call in, yeah?
We've got some questions, and email and that kind of thing, or tweet, or they could tweet you, or they can, whichever.
You guys have been hot on Twitter today, I'll tell you. So, we'll do that tomorrow, and look, Randi, it can be very modest at times, so maybe we can pay a little tribute to her because, wow, she deserves all the praise we can mete out. Okay? All right. So, Melody in Columbus, Ohio, listening on iHeartRadio. Hi, you're on the Randi Rhodes Show with Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. I just had a really quick point to make, something I haven't heard anybody bring up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a real small business person. I'm actually really more self-employed.
Uh-huh.
A couple ladies that work with me once in a while, I can't pay them less than $12 an hour. I feel too guilty.
Right. Well, because you understand these are human beings. And, when you think of someone working for $7.25 an hour, how, it's criminal.
Now, let me tell you, most really small business owners I know don't pay minimum wage. They're already paying $9 or $10 an hour because you can't keep a good person.
That's right.
Unless you pay them to where they actually want to come into work every day.
Sure, and again, you want people who want to come in, who are enthusiastic about the work. And if you pay them, if you pay them such measly wages, it's telling them that's what you think of them.
Well, and think about it this way. People like us that already pay a good wage, and people like Costco and some other grocery stores I know of that pay a living wage,
yep.
That way it's more fair to them.
Sure. Well, everybody
else has to come up to their level, and that's more that levels the playing field for them.
Right, and they get better, more loyal employees, and they keep them longer. Plus, those people now have more money, so they can shop. They can spend their money at Costco, at your business. They can. The money goes right back into the economy, and that's why the Republicans' whole theory about how paying a higher minimum wage would hurt businesses is just bunk. Just doesn't make sense. Melody, thank you for the call. Thank you for listening and for engaging and being involved. Nicole for Randi. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, Randy.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show on the Premier